For a few moments tonight, I want you to set aside everything you believe you know about your life. Put aside the worries, the numbers, the opinions of other people, and even the evidence your own eyes keep presenting to you. There is a truth I want to share with you that may seem almost impossible at first. Yet once it is understood, it has the power to completely change the way you experience reality. The idea is surprisingly simple. Stop allowing facts to rule your life. That may sound strange, because from childhood, we are taught to trust what can be seen, measured, and proven. We are told that a bank balance defines wealth, that a medical report determines the future, that a relationship status decides whether we are loved or alone, and that present circumstances have the final word over who we are. But what if they do not? What if everything standing before you today is only a delayed reflection of something that happened within you long ago? What if your present circumstances are not creating your future, but simply displaying the thoughts, emotions, and assumptions you have already entertained in the past? This is where true freedom begins. The world calls these things facts, but facts are not the same as truth. A fact is only the visible result of a previous state of consciousness. It is the harvest of seeds planted long before today, the physical expression of yesterday's thinking, yesterday's emotions, and yesterday's beliefs finally taking form. In other words, the circumstances surrounding you right now are not creating your reality. They are revealing the reality you previously created within yourself. Once you understand this, something extraordinary happens. You stop treating your current situation as an enemy that must be fought. You stop believing your circumstances have authority over your future. Instead, you recognize them for what they truly are: old echoes still lingering in the world of form. Think of standing in a valley and shouting your name. The sound travels outward, strikes the mountains, and eventually returns as an echo. Once you hear it, there is nothing you can do to stop that echo from coming back, because it has already been released. Your present life works in exactly the same way. What you experience today is an echo of assumptions you once accepted as true. It has already been sent into motion. But while that old echo continues to fade away, you are free to speak something entirely new. Most people never realize this. Instead of creating a different future, they spend their days reacting emotionally to yesterday's manifestations. They argue with circumstances, fear appearances, and become discouraged because the outer world has not changed quickly enough. Without realizing it, they keep reinforcing the very reality they wish to escape. Every fearful reaction plants another seed. Every anxious thought strengthens the old state. Every moment spent believing appearances are permanent gives those appearances more life. This is why so many people feel trapped. They unknowingly continue feeding the conditions they desperately want to leave behind. But you do not have to live that way. Imagine waking tomorrow morning with the quiet confidence that your desire has already been fulfilled. Imagine moving through the day, carrying yourself like someone who has already received everything they once prayed for. How would you think? How would you speak? How would you walk into a room? How differently would you treat yourself if you truly believed the life you desired was already yours? These questions are far more powerful than they first appear, because your answers reveal the state of consciousness you occupy every single day. Life faithfully mirrors that state. It is never responding merely to your words. It responds to the identity you consistently accept as your own. If, deep inside, you still see yourself as someone who struggles, life continues presenting struggles. If you secretly believe opportunities always pass you by, reality finds endless ways to confirm that expectation. If you believe love is difficult to find, circumstances organize themselves around that belief until it feels undeniable. But the opposite is equally true. The moment you begin identifying yourself differently, the entire creative process begins changing beneath the surface. Nothing may appear different immediately. Your bank account might display the same number. Your body may feel exactly as it did yesterday. The relationship may not suddenly improve overnight. The opportunity may not arrive the next morning. That does not mean nothing is happening. A seed buried beneath the earth shows no visible signs of life during its earliest stages. Yet beneath the surface, an incredible transformation has already begun. The shell is breaking open. Roots are quietly reaching downward. Life is unfolding in complete silence long before anyone can see a single green leaf. Creation follows the same principle. Everything meaningful begins invisibly. Every success, every relationship, every healing, every opportunity, every new chapter of life. Each one first exists within consciousness before it ever appears in physical experience. This is why your imagination deserves more respect than your circumstances. Your imagination is not escapism. It is not fantasy. It is the workshop where tomorrow is being designed. The images you repeatedly accept, the conversations you rehearse within yourself, the emotions you return to each day, these are the seeds from which your future grows. Choose them carefully, guard them faithfully. Live as though your desired reality already exists within you, because in consciousness, it already does. Do not measure your progress by what your eyes report today. Measure it by the peace you feel when you remain loyal to your chosen assumption. The visible world always follows the invisible one. The effect never comes before the cause. Change the cause within, and the effect without has no choice but to follow. So the next time circumstances try to convince you that nothing is changing, smile quietly. Let appearances say whatever they wish. Refuse to surrender your inner certainty to temporary evidence. The facts you see today belong to yesterday's thinking. They are not the final chapter of your story. Choose your new state. Accept it completely. Feel it until it becomes natural. Walk through life as the person who has already received what once seemed impossible. When you remain faithful to that inner reality, the outer world will gradually reshape itself to match it. That is the law. That is the mystery. And once you truly understand it, you will never again allow passing circumstances to decide what you believe about yourself or what is possible for your life. Have you ever paused long enough to ask yourself a question that reaches beneath the noise of ordinary life? Not later tonight, not after one more task is finished, but right now. Ask yourself honestly, without excuses and without distraction. Are you truly exhausted? Not the ordinary tiredness that follows a demanding day or a busy week, because that kind of fatigue is natural and even meaningful. It tells you that you have lived, worked, and given something of yourself. I am speaking about a deeper exhaustion, the kind that settles into your spirit and seems untouched by sleep, rest, or a weekend away, because it was never caused by physical labor alone. Perhaps you have spent years fighting battles that were never yours to fight, trying to force outcomes that were never meant to be controlled, and pouring your strength into opening doors that were never locked. Somewhere along the way, you may have come to believe that success belongs only to those who never stop striving. So you planned every detail, built strategy upon strategy, searched for better timing, better methods, better connections, and convinced yourself that one more attempt, one more conversation, one more perfectly executed plan would finally produce the breakthrough you have been chasing. Yet despite all that effort, something still feels missing, as if you are swimming against a current that never weakens, where every stroke demands more energy than the last, and every new effort leaves you more drained than before. Tonight, I want to offer you a different perspective, one that does not ask you to become more disciplined, more productive, or more relentless. You have probably already collected enough methods, systems, and techniques to fill an entire bookshelf. But what you need is not another strategy. What you need is relief. The kind of relief that comes when someone gently removes a burden you did not even realize you were carrying. The kind of freedom that appears when you discover that the struggle itself was never required. Think about how desire first enters your life. Maybe it is the dream of a loving relationship, financial freedom, healing, a meaningful career, or a creative vision that refuses to leave your heart. Whatever form it takes, that desire feels alive. It carries excitement, possibility, and hope. What if that desire exists for a reason? What if it did not appear by accident? Consider the possibility that every genuine desire is evidence of a future already waiting to unfold, and that those dreams arise because they belong to the path you were always meant to walk. But notice what usually happens next. Instead of allowing that vision to inspire you, your mind immediately begins calculating. You start asking how it can happen, creating plans, analyzing probabilities, studying every possible route toward your goal, and racing through endless scenarios about who can help you, which opportunity to chase, which conversation might open another door, and which decision offers the highest chance of success. Without realizing it, you begin trying to engineer the entire future from the limited perspective of your present mind. Then the pushing begins. You work longer hours, convince yourself that rest is weakness, push harder when rejection comes, ignore exhaustion when it appears, and silence doubt with more determination. Every obstacle becomes another challenge to overcome through sheer force of will. If one door remains closed, you knock again. If nothing changes, you double your effort. You tell yourself that success simply requires more persistence. But after all that striving, one of two things usually happens. Sometimes nothing changes at all, and disappointment grows so heavy that you begin questioning your own worth instead of questioning the approach itself. Other times you finally reach the goal, but it feels strangely empty because the achievement arrives carrying the same anxiety that produced it, and instead of lasting peace, it leaves you searching for the next accomplishment, as though nothing inside has truly changed. Why does this happen? Because most people unknowingly confuse two completely different responsibilities. They believe they must both imagine the dream and personally construct every detail of how it becomes reality. They assume they must be both the visionary and the engineer. But there is an intelligence operating beneath everything that does not require your constant supervision. Life itself contains an order far greater than the plans of the thinking mind. And while you exhaust yourself trying to control every outcome, that deeper intelligence simply waits for the moment you finally recognize that there is another way. Here is the truth that changes everything. Your effort is not what creates your future. The state of consciousness you consistently live from is what shapes your experience. Read that slowly. It is not endless planning. It is not relentless struggle. It is not clever strategies or extraordinary discipline. The creative power behind your life responds most deeply to the assumptions you accept as true, and your inner state becomes the blueprint from which your outer world is formed. When you genuinely begin living from the feeling that your desire is already part of your reality, not something distant that you hope will arrive someday, but something that already belongs to you inwardly, everything begins to shift. Without force, circumstances slowly reorganize themselves. Unexpected opportunities appear. The right conversations happen naturally. People enter your life at moments you could never have scheduled. Solutions emerge from places your logical mind never considered. And perhaps the greatest surprise is this: the actions you take no longer feel exhausting. Instead of struggling against life, you feel as though life is quietly carrying you forward. The journey becomes less about forcing doors open and more about recognizing the ones that were opening all along. This is not wishful thinking. It is the natural result of allowing your inner state to lead your outer experience rather than expecting your outer circumstances to create your inner peace. Now let us look more closely at what many people call Source, because this idea is often misunderstood. Some imagine it as a distant power sitting somewhere beyond the stars, watching every move they make and deciding whether they are worthy of receiving what they desire. They believe they must impress it with perfect behavior, flawless faith, endless rituals, or constant positive thinking before it will finally respond. But what if that picture is completely mistaken? Source is not something outside of you waiting to judge your worth. It is not separate from your existence, nor is it keeping score of your successes and failures. Source is the very awareness through which you experience life. It is the quiet presence behind every thought, every feeling, and every moment of consciousness. Long before you learned your name, before you built an identity or collected memories, there was simple awareness. That awareness still exists beneath all the worries, calculations, and stories you tell yourself. It is deeper than your personality and wiser than your logical mind. It is the creative intelligence that silently sustains every living thing, and it knows possibilities your conscious mind cannot imagine. It sees connections before they appear. It understands pathways hidden behind circumstances that seem impossible. What appears miraculous to the human mind is simply natural intelligence operating beyond the limits of ordinary perception. Yet, this creative power asks for one thing. It cannot fully guide someone who insists on controlling every step. Imagine hiring the most experienced guide in the world to lead you through a massive wilderness. This guide has explored every trail, crossed every river, climbed every mountain, and memorized every hidden path. He knows where danger waits, where shortcuts exist, and exactly how to reach your destination safely. Now imagine refusing to follow him. Instead, you rush ahead on your own. You choose random paths because they look faster. You ignore every warning he gives. When he tells you a cliff lies ahead, you convince yourself that your own judgment is better. You spend hours climbing obstacles that could have been avoided. You wander into dead ends. You waste precious energy retracing your steps, all while wondering why the journey feels so exhausting. Eventually, frustration replaces confidence, and you begin questioning whether the guide knows the way at all. Even though the real problem was never his guidance, it was your unwillingness to trust it. This is exactly how many people approach life. They ask for wisdom but refuse to listen. They pray for direction then immediately return to overthinking every possibility. They say they trust the greater intelligence of life, yet behave as though everything depends entirely on their own calculations. They believe they must constantly monitor every detail or everything will fall apart. So they keep planning, they keep worrying, they keep forcing, and then they wonder why peace always feels just out of reach. The truth is that infinite intelligence does not need constant instructions from you. It does not forget your desires. It does not require endless reminders or repeated attempts to convince it of what you want. It already knows. The challenge is not convincing souls to act. The challenge is becoming quiet enough to recognize where it is already leading you. At this point, many people raise an important question. If I stop forcing everything, doesn't that mean I stop taking action? Absolutely not. Life is movement, and every meaningful dream eventually expresses itself through action. The difference lies not in whether you act, but in the state from which your actions arise. There are two very different kinds of action. The first is forced action. Forced action grows from fear and lack. It comes from believing that what you want is absent and must be chased before someone else gets it. Every decision is driven by urgency. Every effort carries hidden anxiety. Every conversation is filled with the silent fear that this opportunity might be the last one. Even when these actions appear productive on the surface, they quietly reinforce one message within your subconscious: I don't have it. That feeling becomes the foundation beneath every choice you make. The second kind is inspired action. Inspired action begins after your inner world has already accepted the fulfillment of your desire. Instead of acting from panic, you move from confidence. Instead of chasing, you respond. Instead of forcing opportunities into existence, you naturally recognize the ones already unfolding before you. Something remarkable begins to happen. Ideas seem to arrive from nowhere. Solutions appear without struggle. A sudden thought encourages you to call someone you had not considered in months. You feel unexpectedly drawn toward a place or opportunity that seems unrelated to your goal. Sometimes you wake in the middle of the night with complete clarity about a decision that had confused you for weeks. These moments often seem random, but they are anything but random. They are subtle invitations. They are the quiet language through which deeper intelligence communicates. The more you learn to trust these gentle impressions, instead of the loud voice of fear, the more naturally life begins to unfold. When you act from this place, everything feels different. You are no longer trying to convince life to cooperate. You are cooperating with life. There is a calm certainty beneath every decision. The work may still require effort, discipline, and commitment, but it no longer drains your spirit because it is no longer fueled by desperation. It feels less like dragging a heavy weight uphill and more like stepping onto a current already moving in the direction you wish to go. That is the difference between living from control and living from trust. One demands endless struggle. The other allows intelligence greater than your own to reveal the path one step at a time. To understand how this principle works in everyday life, consider the story of a woman who once shared her experience with me. For more than a year, she dreamed of leaving the city where she lived. Every day she felt confined, convinced that the life she longed for existed somewhere else. She believed that a fresh beginning in another place would finally bring the opportunities, relationships, and sense of fulfillment she had been searching for. Determined to make it happen, she worked relentlessly. She submitted countless applications, reached out to every contact she could think of, attended networking events, revised her resume repeatedly, and spent hours searching for openings. She treated the dream as something she had to chase before it slipped away forever. Yet despite all that effort, nothing changed. Weeks turned into months, and every rejection only deepened her belief that she was trapped. The harder she pushed, the more exhausted and discouraged she became, until she began questioning not only her methods, but the dream itself. So I asked her a simple question. What is the emotional state you are living in every time you take these actions? After a long pause, she answered honestly, I feel like someone who desperately needs to escape. That single sentence revealed everything. Her efforts were not coming from confidence or expectation. They were coming from desperation. Every email, every application, every conversation carried the emotional message that she was stuck, incomplete, and still waiting for life to begin. Without realizing it, she was reinforcing the very identity she wanted to leave behind. I encouraged her to stop trying to force the outcome, not because effort was wrong, but because the energy behind her effort was working against her. Instead of spending every waking hour trying to control the process, I asked her to spend time each day imagining that the move had already happened. I invited her to picture herself waking up in her new home, walking unfamiliar streets with confidence, arranging furniture in a place that already belonged to her, and feeling the quiet satisfaction of knowing she had arrived exactly where she wanted to be. At first, it felt unnatural, but she continued. Gradually, something unexpected happened. The anxiety that had been driving her constant activity began to dissolve. She no longer felt compelled to chase every opportunity or obsess over every rejection. Instead of living from the identity of someone trying to escape, she began living from the identity of someone whose future was already unfolding. The old city no longer felt like a prison. It simply felt like a temporary place she was preparing to leave behind. Only 2 weeks later, an old friend she had not spoken with in years reached out unexpectedly. During their conversation, she learned that the friend had recently relocated to the exact city she had been imagining. And even more surprisingly, the company where the friend worked was searching for someone with her precise skills and experience. An interview was arranged almost effortlessly. She traveled there, met the team, and was offered the position. Within a short time, she had made the move she had spent more than a year trying to force into existence. When she reflected on the experience afterward, she described it with one word: inevitable. Looking back, it felt as though the opportunity had always been there. It had simply become visible once she stopped exhausting herself trying to create it through fear and struggle. This illustrates an important truth. Surrender is not weakness, and it is certainly not giving up. True surrender means releasing the belief that you must personally control every detail of how your desire unfolds. It means trusting that there is an intelligence capable of arranging circumstances more elegantly than your anxious mind ever could. As you begin living this way, you will notice certain signs that reveal whether you are acting from trust or from fear. When you are aligned with that deeper intelligence,